Hello everyone, my name is Theodore Dwight Weld, and I want to take you back to a time when this country was wrestling with its soul. A time when slavery was not only legal, but also defended in churches, politics, and polite conversation. It was a time when people who looked like me could speak up or stay quiet, and many chose the latter, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. I was born in 1803 in Hampton, Connecticut, and raised in a pretty religious household. From the start, faith was woven into everything: our work, schooling, and relationships. But it wasn't just about church on Sundays. I was taught that faith should mean something in how you treat people and how you live every day. That belief really stuck with me. I was still young when my father passed, and I had to step up and help my family. I worked hard, studied when I could, and eventually made my way to Hamilton College and then the Oneida Institute, which was way ahead of its time. Oneida was about manual labor and higher learning, not separating the two. The idea of working with your hands while developing your mind helped shape how I viewed equality. No one was better than anyone else just because of money or status. That was huge for me. But if I had to pick a turning point in my life, it would be the first time that I heard Charles Finney preach. He was part of the Second Great Awakening, a big spiritual revival sweeping across the country. His message struck me like lightning. He didn't just talk about going to heaven or being saved. He said real Christianity meant acting on your beliefs, that we are called to fight sin, and not just inside ourselves, but in our society. That changed everything. Because when I looked around, the biggest and most obvious sin in our country was slavery. It wasn't just a political issue anymore. This was happening every single day. Families were being torn apart. People were being treated like animals, all of it, justified by greed and worse, twisted scripture. I couldn't understand how anyone could call themselves Christians and turn a blind eye to this. So I immersed myself headfirst into abolition. In 1830s, I started speaking out publicly and loudly. I became a lecturer for the American Anti-Slavery Society, traveling from town to town, giving speeches, organizing meetings, and talking to anyone who would listen. It wasn't easy. We got shouted down, threatened, and sometimes physically attacked. But I couldn't stop. The more I spoke, the more I felt God was using me for something bigger. One of the things that I am proudest of is the group of speakers I trained, known as the 70, a band of young abolitionists who traveled the country to spread the message. Most of them were students or recent grads, fired up and ready to go. We trained in logic, speech, and how to respond calmly when mobs tried to shut us up. These weren't just lectures, these were missions. People like to think that the North was all anti-slavery and that the South was all for it. That's just not true. In the North, a lot of folks were just as resistant to our message. We show up to speak and churches would lock their doors. Whole towns would refuse to host us. Why? Because challenging slavery meant challenging their comfort, their business ties, their quiet lives. That's when I started pushing harder. Not just emotionally, but factually. I knew we needed something that couldn't be brushed off as radical or too emotional. So I worked with two incredible women, Angelina and Sarah Grimke, to create a book that laid bare the truth. It was called American Slavery as It Is. Testimony of 1,000 witnesses in 1839. We didn't make stuff up. We used actual advertisements from Southern newspapers, quotes from slaveholders, testimonies from enslaved people. We wanted people to see the everyday horror, the casual cruelty, and the way slavery dehumanized not only the people in chains, but the people who defended it. That book reached thousands, including Harriet Beecher Stowe, who later wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. She said our work helped shape her own. That meant a lot. We weren't just shouting in the wind, we were moving hearts. But not everything was a victory. I watched churches split over slavery. Denominations crumbled because people couldn't agree on what the Bible said about human freedom. Some pastors said that slavery was God ordained and that black people were meant to be servants. I couldn't believe it. These were people preaching love and grace on Sundays and defending chains on Monday. It made me angry and heartbroken. I believed then, and I still believe now, that faith without justice isn't real faith at all. Eventually, all of this speaking and stress wore me down. My voice gave out, literally. I couldn't keep traveling and speaking like I used to. But God had another path for me. I married Angelina Grimke, one of the strongest women I had ever known. She didn't just talk about justice, she lived it. Together we worked for abolition and women's rights because those two fights were connected. We opened schools that accepted black students, white students, boys and girls side by side. That felt like progress. That felt like hope. When the Civil War finally came, I had mixed feelings. I was glad that the country was finally being forced to deal with slavery, but I hated the violence. So many lives lost, so much destruction. Still, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and slavery was eventually abolished, I felt something close to peace. It had taken years, so much pain, but it happened. The system I fought against for most of my life was finally brought down. Looking back, I wasn't the loudest or the most famous abolitionist. I didn't run for office. I didn't lead troops, but I used my voice, my pen, and my faith. I believe that if you follow Christ, you don't get to sit on the sidelines. You have to speak up when others are silent. You have to love when others hate. You have to fight even when it's uncomfortable or dangerous. That's what Protestantism means to me. Not just a leader or a church membership, but a calling. A way of seeing the world that says no person is more valuable than another, and no injustice should be ignored because it's convenient. I've seen people twist religion to defend terrible things, but I have also seen people use their faith to do incredible good. I chose to be in the second group, and I still hope others do too. Thanks for listening to my story, and most importantly, thank you for caring enough to learn from it.